Well, Celia, thank you very much for that kind introduction. Dean Gonzalez, great to be here with you. Looking forward to the discussion. I'm very glad to have a packed house here today, no doubt because of the stakes of global events, the stakes of the discussions that we're having as we speak in the United States of America. And I'm looking forward to a broad discussion this afternoon. I'm going to focus my remarks on an underlying simmering crisis in the world today that doesn't get enough attention. I'm here today as a United States Senator who is deeply concerned about the future of our world. The Middle East stands on the precipice of a war that, in my mind, is totally unnecessary. My nation is pushing away friends and cozying up to enemies in an international attempt to elevate the cause of autocracy in the United States and all over the world. A global recession potentially looms as President Trump throws the global economy into chaos with his nonsensical tariff threats. This last weekend in the United States, our citizens watched as our president marched an army through the streets of Washington in an odd tribute to authoritarian behavior. 5 million Americans showed up at hundreds of anti-Trump, pro-democracy protests all across the country, and a state legislator in Minnesota was assassinated by a right-wing zealot. Our world and our nation, they face enormous challenges today, and as a senior member of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, as the top Democrat on the subcommittee that oversees U.S.-Europe relations, I know that none of these tempests can be confronted if the United States and Europe don't work together. Most importantly, right now, on Iran, where French, German, and British officials are meeting with Iranian counterparts in Geneva tomorrow to try to prevent a broader war in the region. But I mentioned I wanted to talk about a different crisis that is brewing and advancing every single day. Because underneath the daily headlines of war and protest, we are all perhaps missing the most important story of the present moment. And that is the story of the development of the most revolutionary technology of our lifetime, and perhaps in the history of the world, advanced artificial intelligence. And so today, for my prepared remarks, and we can have a discussion on the topics of your choosing, I'm going to set aside the immediate global crises and focus on the most existential threat of all the threats that we face: unchecked, advanced artificial intelligence. A few months ago, political leaders from all around the world, the most sophisticated AI researchers and the CEOs of the biggest tech companies gathered about 15 minutes from this auditorium for a major international summit on AI. And these summits started a few years ago. The first was in the United Kingdom. It was called the AI Safety Summit. It was called the AI Safety Summit because policymakers knew that unchecked AI could be a massive job killer, a frightening accelerator of political instability, and a global wealth concentrator. There were important conversations at these first two AI safety summits about how governments could work together to make sure that society gets the best of AI. And there are endless positive impacts of AI, while being protected from abuse and catastrophic job loss. But this year's summit here in Paris was different. It was different because the name was changed. It wasn't the AI Safety Summit any longer. It was the AI Action Summit. And safety and mitigating the risks associated with the rapid acceleration of AI didn't just lose top billing, they were barely part of the conversation. The headline speech at the conference was delivered by the American Vice President and my former colleague, J.D. Vance. And the speech was, quite frankly, delusional and incoherent. It was delusional because the current U.S. administration is right now fully captured by the AI industry, and they are focused only on driving up the industry's profits at the expense of the American worker and the American family. The Vice President said at that summit that the White House refuses to view AI as a purely disruptive technology that will inevitably automate away our labor force. But this is exactly what unregulated, unchecked AI will do. The Vice President claimed that the White House wanted the AI-driven internet to be a safe place, but refused to endorse a single rule or a single idea that would keep it safe, apparently believing the industry whitewashed that they will just self-regulate and prioritize family and citizen safety above profit, something the tech industry has never done. The speech was incoherent because it creates this fantasy world in which light or no public regulation of AI is compatible with a world where real human jobs are protected and AI doesn't spiritually or politically disintegrate our communities. That's another line fed to Vance and the White House by their tech industry patrons. The job displacement could be fast and devastating once AI reaches the stage referred to in the industry as artificial general intelligence, or AGI. That's the point at which AI can reason or problem solve as well and inevitably better than humans. The AI companies know this. They know that the faster the job displacement is, the more that they, the AI companies, will reap the reward. So of course the AI companies have an incentive to underplay or downright mislead about how many jobs will be lost, because the faster the jobs are lost, the more profit they stand to make. The incoherence was also clear when Vance talked about the White House's plan to win the global AI race with China. Yes, it's important for the United States and Europe as well to win that race for global AI supremacy, to not allow China to win that race, because whoever controls the most powerful AI systems in the world are going to have enormous power and influence. But the White House is actually pursuing a strategy that will help China's performance in that race. Now, before I sound like too much of a pessimist or a Luddite, let me be clear. AI is a transformational technology. It will likely turn out to be one of the most socially and economically disruptive technologies ever. It's probably going to be bigger than the printing press or advanced medicine or the internet. And there's also no doubt that it has enormous practical upsides. Medical advances will come more quickly, production will be cheaper, administration will become more efficient, complex societal problems will be solved more easily. I want all that upside. And I want the United States, with our European partners, to lead. I want the bulk of the jobs that AI creates to be in my country. And to the extent we share leadership, I want to share it with values partners like France and the European community. But Vance's argument here in Paris that the jobs will just flood into the United States and Europe just as long as we keep the AI industry basically unregulated and unchecked does not square with common sense. Once AI can reason more effectively than a human, AI will undoubtedly be a net job killer, not a job creator. Once a machine can problem solve better than a computer, in addition to writing, creating, coding, and driving better than humans, the job displacement is going to be massive. It's going to be debilitating. That part's just common sense. There aren't going to be enough jobs to keep up. The CEO of Anthropic, one of the biggest companies in this industry, recently estimated that AGI would wipe out half of all white-collar entry-level jobs, spiking unemployment by 10 to 20% within the next decade. American and European societies will likely implode if unemployment reached sustained levels above 20 to 30%. The CEO of Amazon, America's second largest private sector employer, last week, told his employees that he expects AI to reduce the company's total workforce from software developers to employees in warehouses, not in 15 years, not in 10 years, but in the next few years, a massive contraction in the employment size of America's second biggest private employer in the next 2 years. Now, AGI is going to create a lot of new jobs. It's just not going to be as many jobs as it destroys. If America and Europe is where the industry flourishes, there will be jobs involved in the development and the maintenance of these new supercomputers. But we've also seen this playbook before. The AI industry leaders who claim that there is going to be net job gains are already preparing to pull this same trick of outsourcing that happened in the 1980s when they promised all the better jobs would replace the manufacturing jobs that were leaving for Mexico or China. In an open letter from OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman to the public earlier this month, again, this is all brand new information because the technology is happening right before our eyes, the leaps and the gains. He said, if we have to make the first million humanoid robots the old-fashioned way, but then they can operate the entire supply chain, digging and refining minerals, driving trucks, running factories to build more robots, which can build more chip fabrication facilities, data centers, et cetera, then the rate of progress will obviously be quite different. Sometimes they actually say the quiet part out loud. There, Altman is talking explicitly and excitedly about using AI to build robots that will take the good-paying jobs of millions of middle-class families. Not enough jobs are going to be created to replace the jobs we lose. But even the new jobs probably won't stay for long in the United States and Europe because of the industry's insatiable desire to maximize profits. A year ago, Altman came to my office, sat down with me on my couch to pitch a new idea at the time. He wanted to outsource the power supply and the data housing necessary to run AGI to the Middle East. President Trump is now implementing that plan. Evidence that the industry doesn't really care about creating jobs in the United States if they can build capacity more cheaply anywhere else in the world. The industry is hunting profits. And to boost return on investment without any guardrails imposed on them by the government, they are going to use the same labor arbitrage techniques that other industries have used to ship as many AI jobs as they can away from the United States and Europe to countries with lower labor costs. As for the argument that we need minimal or no regulation of AI in the United States or Europe because it's better for consumers if AI breakthroughs happen here rather than in China, there's not a lot of evidence that that's true either. Earlier this year, I went to Silicon Valley. I just decided to spend 4 days in Silicon Valley meeting with everybody who knew anything about AI. And in all my conversations, I could divine very few American values that are guiding the development and deployment of AGI in the United States. These companies have offices in the United States, but that may be the extent of their loyalty to our country. The only value that guides the AI industry right now is the pursuit of profit. In all of my meetings, it was crystal clear that companies like Google and Apple and OpenAI and Anthropic are in a race to deploy consumer-facing, job-killing AGI as quickly as possible in order to beat each other to the market. Any talk about ethical or moral AI from the industry seems mostly like whitewash. And they are in such a hurry that they can't even explain how the large language models they are marketing come to conclusions or synthesize data. Every single executive I met with admitted that they had built a machine that they could not understand or control. One conversational AI program affiliated with Google recently began recommending to kids who were frustrated with their parents that they murder their mother and father. The industry argues that there's no need for regulation or guardrails because they'll regulate themselves, but this is not true, and we increasingly have the evidence to prove it. They're in a race to deploy and commercialize and profit, and they are paying mere lip service to the ways in which AI and AGI could destroy the already fraying fabric of our country. But job loss is not the only risk of heeding Vance's call to just leave the industry alone, because the list of threats posed by unchecked AI is almost endless. Fake video and audio without accountability or legal liability could obliterate any notion of objective truth. The social isolation crisis, something that Celia mentioned, I've spent a lot of time talking about and addressing. It already exists, especially for teens, and it could be set on fire by AI chatbots and friendship programs. In a recent podcast interview, Mark Zuckerberg basically advertised that they are trying to build AI products that replace human beings. He lamented that the average American has less than 3 friends, which is true, but his prescription to solve that problem was robots. To tech CEOs, the loneliness epidemic is just a new market to break into. Somehow these AI executives don't seem to see the spiritual downside, the rot that could occur when machines replace human companionship. Maybe the hardest impact to comprehend is going to be this impact on the human soul, and I won't spend more than a minute talking about it, but what happens to a species whose essential human functions like creativity and friendship and conversation are, within one single generation, replaced by robots? The Industrial Revolution replaced much of human physical labor with machine labor, and that was disruptive, but not nearly as disruptive to human meaning as the replacement of nearly every key mental function with the functionality of computers, connected to vast data farms in the Saudi Arabian desert. Once we start relying on robots to do our thinking and our creativity and our problem solving, there will likely be a mass spiritual atrophy in the human race. And it's really hard to know what that cataclysm will bring. Finally, let's just turn to the Chinese for a minute. As I said, we want to beat the Chinese in the race for global AI, but not at any cost. Frankly, China is likely rooting for us to use American and European citizens as guinea pigs for the AI revolution, because they aren't doing that. China is being relatively careful with how it develops and rolls out AI. From 2021 to 23, China began to build out a governance framework with some of the world's earliest AI regulations and technical standards, bringing service providers into compliance on issues ranging from ethics to data protection to safety and security. China's attempts at regulation have been lighter than the EU, but it's just not true that China believes that the way to beat the United States towards AI prominence is by not regulating the industry. China would love for the United States economy to collapse because we are less thoughtful than Beijing in controlling the job loss. They would love for unchecked fake video and audio to turn our culture into chaos. They would love for our young people to become even further lost and isolated as robot friends replace real friends and real interaction. Regulating AI isn't a gift to China. It's a way to make sure that we manage the growth of AI in a way that makes sure that we beat the Chinese in this race. A few years ago, the AI industry made this very big public spectacle. They all came down to Washington to show their support for regulation. It seemed a little fishy to many of us. And when it came down to it, they refused to actually engage in any specifics. They didn't endorse any actual proposal. And once Trump came into office, we all discovered that our suspicion was warranted, because gifted with a White House that was willing to be sold to the highest bidder, the industry made their real request: no AI regulation at all. They pushed for and secured a provision in this giant Republican budget that's moving through the Congress right now that actually bans all and any regulation of AI at the state level, knowing full well that federal regulation is normally inspired by state models that provide both a practical and political impetus for the federal government to step in. Now, it remains to be seen if that provision will be stripped out of the Senate version, but stopping state regulation makes it a whole lot easier for the industry to stop or slow federal regulation entirely. So I want to beat China in this race. I know Europe does too, but not at any cost, as I said. If we don't use government policy and intervention to mitigate job losses and to protect consumers, it won't matter that we get to AGI before China. AGI without limits could eliminate so many jobs and undermine so many of our values that China will cheer our decision to rush to AGI in our blind desire to come first. I know that AI is going to change our lives in positive ways. Lives are going to be longer. Food's going to become less scarce. Many breakthrough inventions are going to come faster. But we can't lose sight of our ability to recognize the potential of emerging technological transformations and decide early on to regulate them and control them in a way that efficiently delivers the positive benefits while also protecting people. We've done this over and over again in the United States and Europe. We did this with railroads. We did this with advanced medicine. We did this with nuclear technology. We regulated those industries, and we still led the world, and we can do it with AI. The AI industry is counting on us to be too pliant and gullible in government to see through their claims that regulation will hurt America or Europe and help China. The leaders of these companies, brimming with dangerous hubris, rapacious in their desire to build wealth and power, and far too comfortable in shrugging off the destructive power of their product. They claim that any meaningful regulation of AI in America or in Europe will allow China to leapfrog ahead of the rest of us. But they're wrong. In fact, the opposite is true. If we do not protect our economy and our culture from the potential ravages of advanced AI, our nations will rot from the inside out, giving China a free lane to pass us politically and economically. I appreciate you allowing me to talk about this topic today. I'm game for a conversation on any major crisis in the United States or across the world, but if we don't get this right soon, if we don't decide collectively as a transatlantic community to protect ourselves from the most transformational technology of our lifetime, and as I said, perhaps in the history of the world, we won't have democracies to be able to protect the values that we care so deeply about. We won't be able to debate domestic and foreign policy. There is perhaps nothing more important at this moment in time than figuring out the right path on the transformation of our economy and culture by AI, given the fact that that very important summit happened here not more than a few moments ago, given the fact that I think our vice president misrepresented the facts and misrepresented the actual opinion of the American people, the worry of the American people on the path that we are taking right now. I thought it was important to begin our discussion on this topic. Thanks a lot for hosting me today. Appreciate it.